Good morning, everyone who's watching, and welcome to this book launch. My name is Dr. Alvin Pang, a writer and poet and editor here in Singapore. And we are gathered here today really to celebrate the launch of a new work by Singaporean writer Isa Kamari. So a few quick words about Isa. He has written 10 novels, 3 collections of poetry, a collection of short stories, a book of essays on Singaporean Malay poetry, as well as a collection of theatre scripts, lyrics, and so on, all in Malay. He has one novel before this written in English, and that's the novel Tweet, published in 2016. And this is, in fact, his second work written in English. His novels in general have been translated into various languages around the world, including, of course, English, but also Turkish, Urdu, Arabic, Jawi, Thai, Indonesian, Russian, French, Spanish, and Mandarin. And for his many, many contributions to literature in Singapore and beyond, he has been conferred the Southeast Asian Writer Award in 2006, and in 2007, he won Singapore's highest honor for an artist, the Singapore Cultural Medallion. So Isa, say hi. Isa speaking to us.
Yeah, pleased to meet you.
Isa speaking to us from the city of Vancouver in Canada. Isn't technology wonderful? So he's launching his book today. And of course, the book in question is The Throne. If we could throw up the cover, it would be wonderful. Isa's latest work. Now, those of you who know Isa Kamari's work will know he is no stranger to challenging themes and issues, right? He's always pushing the boundaries of the form of fiction, as well as of ideas and concepts, and some of which may shade into contentious issues or issues of debate. Now, his latest novel deals with themes of schizophrenia, but also challenging the boundaries between the physical and spiritual worlds, and in fact, the worlds of poetry and prose. So, pushing a lot of boundaries and conventions at the same time. What we're going to do today, really, to launch the book, is to have Isa read from the novel, from his new novel, and then we'll have a conversation about some of the ideas in the book. I would love to hear from the audience as well. If you have any questions, please do unmute yourself or post your questions in chat. But perhaps to kick us off, I would like to invite the publisher of this new novel, Zafir, to come on and maybe say a few words about the experience of publishing this book, what it means to him as a publisher to carry this new work by Isa Kamari. Zafir, please.
Thank you, Alvin. First of all, congratulations to Isa Kamari for his latest book's outing. And thank you, National Arts Council and the Arts House and Singapore Writers Festival, everybody associated with it, to give us the opportunity to release this short but beautiful novel, meaningful novel. I would come to the backstory a little bit. I won't take much time. I know you want to hear from Isa and Alvin. And by the way, thank you, Alvin, for moderating this. Really grateful to you for this, making this Sunday evening very memorable for all of us. We have been publishing Isa's books for the last couple of years now. I think the last book that we did together was in English, was in Tweet, in English as well as in Malay, and that was a beautiful book. And before that, we had the opportunity to translate one of his novels into Urdu, which is first for a Singaporean author, from English into Urdu, and it was launched in India. And since then, these books have been translated in many, many languages, as Alvin mentioned. This particular book was, in fact, it was with us since last year, right, Isa?
Yeah.
And we wanted to release it at the right opportunity. So we waited for this year, and we worked on the book meanwhile, the edits and everything. And when Isa sent the manuscript, I mean, I love all his work, and I have even thoughts and plans to, convert some of them into films if possible. And I keep discussing the possibilities, with my filmmaker friends from this region, because I find his themes very fascinating. probably one of those very few writers, especially from this part of the world, who can fuse modern narratives with spiritual elements, with the spirituality. And that part I find very fascinating. Be it Tweet, be it his earlier novel, which was translated into Urdu, The Intercession, or be it this one, The Throne, right? Even though it deals with the mental health issues, it also shows the cultural undercurrents of the Malay community, for example, and its relationship with other communities. And there's a beautiful family portrait that emerges of a time that maybe I've not been witness to, because maybe I came here 20 years ago. So as a cultural study also, right, it gives me a insight, a peek into that kind of life, the kampong life, how Malay used to live, what were their pursuits, and what happens to a person who goes through a mental breakdown, and how does elements of creativity and spirituality come into it. So all these fascinating strands are there in Isa's novel. And when I read that, of course, with eyes closed, I always tell Isa I'll publish your books. I'm very happy and honored, to publish them. So, and glad this one is coming out now. So the cover, of course, the cat and everything, we had a lot of discussion on that. I just wanted to mention it briefly. We have gone through a lot of iterations for the cover also. And the yellow color was chosen because this shade of yellow is supposed to be the color of this year. I don't know if it has any significance or relationship with the pandemic, but this is the color of the year. So we thought, okay, we'll go with this, and stands out. And what is there on the empty chair? I'll let Isa and you to explore that. And with this, I thank you very much again, and over to you, Alvin.
Zafar, thank you so much for speaking as publisher for the book. Now, let us hear from the man himself, Isa. Perhaps you could grace us with a short reading from the novel. I always believe, as a writer myself, the work speaks for itself most of all. So if you could perhaps share with us a short excerpt, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, and then
Sure.
we can talk about the book. Take it away.
I'll be reading the novel on page 53 and 54. We gathered at Father's house to celebrate Hari Raya. My siblings with their families came over after performing the Eid al-Fitr prayers at mosque in their respective housing estate. Everyone was wearing colorful baju kurung and kain samping. As usual, food was catered by me. There was nobody at Father's house to cook and prepare the dishes for about 30 people. My siblings brought some cakes and as desserts. Father was in his room, surrounded by his grandchildren. We sat in the living room and kitchen. There was fun and laughter. Hari Raya songs were aired from the radio. Only he was alone in his room. Suddenly, the merriment was disrupted by loud screams which came from his room. We were shocked. The fun and laughter stopped. Hey, I'm here. Don't you realize that I'm here? I'm the one protecting all of you. They came to attack us. The Omega and Kampong Glam gangs. This ambush our family. It's me who fought them all. The loud thuds and kicks were heard on the door, which was suddenly opened. He emerged. His right hand held a kriss. His eyes were bloodshot. Everyone was shocked, motionless and terrified, witnessing the scene. From where did he get the kriss? I asked myself. Then he rushed to the dining table in the kitchen. He plunged the kriss hard onto the surface of the tabletop. The plates and pans rattled. The blade of the kriss glistened in the light. My sisters who were sitting by the dining table screamed and moved away to the living room. They were scared to death. What's going on? Asked my youngest brother. You shut up, he retorted. I stood up from the sofa in the living room and walked to the kitchen. Father came out from his room, but I gave him the signal to remain inside. Then I asked everyone in the kitchen to leave, and they did. Only my youngest brother, he and I remained. Please be calm. Today is Hari Raya. There's nobody who comes to disturb us. He was taken aback. His eyelids fluttered. His mind must have been shaken and held by a slice of decency. His eyes scanned around the kitchen and living room as if to verify what I just said. Look around, there's nobody except us, your family. We are all here to celebrate Hari Raya. Everyone is happy. You see all the food and cakes on the table. All of you are having fun and laughter, but I'm the only one who is sad. What are you saying? We are all here, your brothers and sisters with our families. We are all happy together. He bit his lips. His eyes were teary. All of you do not know. I am in pain. I scream because I'm in extreme pain. I'm tired, brother. I'm tired to bear all this pain myself, he sobbed. Thank you.
Thank you, Isa, for that. And you know, I found the novel very moving, actually, and because of its depiction of you know, obviously the suffering of mental health and the burden that is borne not just by the patient or you know, the sufferer of mental health, but also the family. And I found that interaction, the way in which this Singaporean Malay family dealt with and engaged with the issues of mental health in one of their members in that particular way, right? Where the sort of the cultural lens, but also the very personal family lens come into play as well. And it's complex, right? So it's not a one-sided thing. There are, you know, many different ways in which it has an impact on the family and many ways in which they deal with it. It goes beyond just the clinical, which I appreciate. It isn't just a medical issue, but there are other elements as well: emotional, personal, economic, legal, and of course the spiritual as well. So I guess the big question on our minds is, Isa, what prompted you to write this novel? What's behind writing this novel?
It is a story that has to be told. The way I look at it, I mean, there are not many works dealing with mental health issues that I know of. I mean, there are a few, but you know, it's far in between. So I thought of really dwell into it, and to add some spice to the whole discussion today, it is actually based on real events.
Okay.
Yeah, so meaning to say that, you know, I had the privilege of knowing the family and really talking to the people and really finding out what's happening and so on. So it is authentic in that case. So, you know, it is very raw, very painful, but yet I think, you know, I really took a lot of courage to actually even tell the story, because it is revealing the story of a family to the audience, to the public. But I thought it is something that, you know, ought to be known by a lot of people, because I think when you are confronted with such issues or such problems, many do not know how to react. Yeah. And I thought my novel could give an inkling of as to what are the things that you have to look out for and what you can do to support the patient to make his life easier, you know, and towards healing. I mean, that's the whole push, so to speak. Yeah.
So one of the elements that really struck me about your novel was that it really goes beyond the idea of mental health as just a psychological or clinical condition, right? It goes into the spiritual. It even goes into the arts. The novel itself blends, you know, quite fluidly poetry and prose. And at one point, it talks about the madness of the poet, which I can very much relate to. The idea that at what point, you know, can we say it's just a disease or insanity, and at what point can we even suggest that it is artistic inspiration or divine or creative inspiration? And it just changes our idea of what this condition means and what it could mean. And I think that extra lens, the lens of faith, the lens of the arts, brings really very different dimensions into this that you build into the writing itself. Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah. when I wrote The Tower last time, I was actually dealing with the issue of alienation and how modern life actually affected our lives. But the treatment of The Tower then was actually more conceptual. It's more on ideas and the ideas behind the creation of or the cause of alienation and actually how the protagonist actually deals with it. But the difference here is that this is actually real experience. Yeah. It is not theoretical. It is something which is authentic. I mean, it is honest in that regard. And then one other element which I try to add in this particular novel is that it has got a dimension of healing. Yeah. And healing through by means of the arts and also by means of spirituality. Like the question we all ask is that at what point would madness become creativity and fly off to be a spiritual journey? So this novel attempts to actually explore that, and besides tracing the causes of the schizophrenia in this particular case, the social political condition that actually created such a traumatic or even a fractured life for the proponent, but how actually he deals with it to actually heal himself. Although he actually consciously do not think that he's healing himself, but his journey towards moving into the arts and then spirituality somehow heal his sickness. And it is something which I've always believed in, that when we look at life itself, we should not be just compartmentalized in the way we look at life. We should look at all dimensions of life, the temporal, the spiritual, the physical, and psychological, all of it, all of them are intertwined, integral. And that gives layers to the narrative itself, that you can look at it from various point of view, political, social, even psychological, religious, what have you. It is, life is a unity, and once we start to break it up, that is where the alienation happens. In my belief. So there is that underpinning behind the novel. Yeah.
It's like that is the real madness, right? When we slice everything too much.
Precisely. Yeah.
When I was reading this, my dad was in hospital, so it had extra resonance for me. You talk about healing, and I really, the beginning of the novel where really spoke to me. You begin from the perspective of the brother, who is, his love for his mentally ill brother is very clear, but also the sort of frustration, and almost to a certain degree a resentment, right? Where the mentally unwell person almost becomes like the king, because his issues, his difficulties dominate the family's attention, as it were. When my dad was in hospital, I can really, really relate to that. But also the idea that, healing, wellness is not just a clinical thing. It's not just take medicine or surgery or whatever. It's morale, it's emotional, the idea that it's far more than just treating the sickness, right? But understanding and appreciating the place we all have together, how we relate to one another. And of course the world.
Yeah, I could imagine actually each case is unique. You cannot have it like a typical solution to it. But at least the issues at hand is sort of being explored. I mean, even to the extent of exorcism, things like that. I mean, that is part of Malay culture. When you get sick mentally, you always call a bomo or the exorcist to come by and then try to cure. So all these dimensions, I sort of put it in the novel. Thin as it is, hopefully there's enough meat for everyone to chew, to really ponder on the need to actually confront and at the same time manage this phenomena, which I think is quite prevalent, especially in fast-paced Singapore. Where, I mean, if you were to look into I mean, if you were to go to IMH and so on, I went there to actually experience the situation, and some of the scenes which I wrote in the book actually are actual events that happened there. So hopefully, when I look at it, it is a necessary pain which I have to go through to be able to come up with some form of beauty, hopefully, as a result of the way I deal with the narrative itself. Yeah.
Could you say a little bit about why you chose to write it in English? And my understanding is that you actually wrote in parallel a Malay version and an English version at the same time, which now that we're talking about your novel and the way the novel's narrative itself runs in several tracks, right? There's the so-called reality, and then there's the reality of the mind, also the physical and spiritual. And it seems like in the writing of it, you're exploring these multiple tracks as well. Could you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, culturally, I write in Malay. I mean, that cannot be denied. But I put a challenge to myself with Tweet initially to actually begin to write in English directly. And then if you're to notice, actually, the way I write it, I'm using simple language. I don't go for bombastic or sophisticated kind of language. It's language of everyday life kind of thing. Because I personally, that it is a challenge for me to be readable in English, so to speak. I mean, there was once before, which I tried to translate my Malay work into English. And when it was translated, a lot of people say it sounds Malay. It is something which I'm not, reserved about. And I mean, I don't mind it be read as Malay and so on. But it does tell me that actually, I think in Malay culturally, yeah. And to be able to challenge myself to write in English is something which I want to do, because it is a faster way of getting my works translated, technically, so to speak. Because it is always through English that my works have been translated into other languages, except for one, for the Chinese version in which the translator knows Malay, then she was able to translate directly from Malay. But most of the time, I need English as a bridge. So instead of asking someone to translate it for me, or I translate it later, why don't I write it concurrently so that it can be translated? And the novel, The Throne, has been translated into Arabic and Russian through the English version, so to speak. Yeah.
Wonderful. When can we expect to see these other versions coming up?
Yeah, the Russian version is already in production. The Arabic version is still looking out for publisher.
Yeah. So we now know that the COVID pandemic has led to a lot of suffering. Some more public than others, but it's put a strain on all our mental health and well-being. So these themes are very current, very resonant. What do you hope your novel can do at a time like this for readers and for the world?
The least that I'm expecting from readers is actually for them to understand that mental issues are real. That's one thing. I mean, it is with us. And unless we actually are able to grasp the issues that sort of, surrounds the phenomena, unless we're only then will we be able to actually try to manage it. And listening to how the brother actually tried to cope, the problem that the mentally ill brother was facing, it is very challenging and very taxing. And it's not an easy task. A lot of people give up halfway. Yeah. And then it needs a lot of understanding, it needs a lot of patience, it needs a lot of commitment to go along together with the patient to help him or her heal. And in this case, it was through the prompting of the brother that the patient himself delved into the healing process and was able to come to terms with himself.
It's not necessarily an easy read, psychologically, because you really do get into the pain of the situation. But there is a lot of love in it, right? And that's something that doesn't often come out. Very often our depictions of writing, they focus on the depictions of mental health. They tend to focus on, again, the clinical aspects, the consequences. But what you see here is a lot of love at the family level, but also at the cultural level as well. You spend a lot of time on the details of how they celebrate Hari Raya, and even down to the rituals, the house, and so on. Which there is a sense in which these elements, these rituals, are part and parcel of what keep life going, right? They're part of the container in which the possibility of healing emerges. Well, I think before we have to wrap up, there's so much to talk about. I'd like to invite the audience to ask any questions if you might have any for Isa. Please feel free to just unmute yourself, or you can post a question in chat.
Alvin,
Yes.
Yeah, while we wait for others to post some questions, right? Maybe I would request Isa to talk a little bit about, even a mentally suffering person can have a love life, right? So there's this story of his visits to Gelang, and there's a story, about drama behind that. What happens?
Oh, yeah.
How does the brother in the family resolve the problem? Of course, we don't want to give away the plot, but can Isa talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, love is actually the solution to his problem, and it is though I would say the elixir, of his rebirth in that regard. So without it, he would be a phenomenon, and it is through love that actually the patient begin to realize he's somebody that deserves a place in life, a place spiritually, physically, and even mentally in that regard. And what I want to also share is that it is through poetry, which I sort of introduced inside the novel. Actually, this element of love is sort of elevated, and it is not love just in between persons, but actually, like Alvin mentioned, culturally, spiritually, there's a lot of love actually, which is the gel in the novel itself, in the narrative. It is through love that his mental illness was healed. But how it was healed, I think you have to buy the book to find out. Yeah.
So, are there any other final closing words? I just wanted to say, Isa, that I really enjoyed the poetry in it, and it seems to me very evident that in offering the poetry, you are also stepping into the situation of this man, because you're taking on the madness of the poet, and therefore taking on, in a sense, the anguish of what it means to be alive, right? There's a sense in which we are all in our own way suffering and dealing with these questions. In his case, because of his condition, the questions and the effects are more extreme, but really we're all under that kind of strain every day, and we're reaching for, as you say, the love and other relations that can help us cope with and understand where and who we are in the world. I think that's about all we have time for. Please do check out this book. It is available on the Singapore Writers Festival bookstore, and the link is in the chat. It is once again Isa Kamari's new novel, The Throne. It's a short but I feel powerful read, and represents, I think, a new addition to his growing body of work. And I think it takes it in a very fresh direction. It's very Isa in its dealing with challenging themes in an unflinching way, but I think there's a lot of compassion and beauty in it as well. So highly recommend The Throne by Isa Kamari.
Thank you.
And that remains for me to thank Isa and Zafar for being with us today and for talking a little bit about the book. And thank you, Writers Festival, for this opportunity to share about this new book that's just come out. Please do check out the book and have a lovely weekend. Isa, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alvin. Thank you, Isa.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.